Good morning. Welcome to our time this morning on our Sabbath understanding, our Sabbath meditations and discussions. We thank you that you've joined in with us, or that you will be joining in with us as we go through this process. It is so good to be with you again. I was enjoying some time with my family last weekend during the meditations. I hope you had good meditations on Parshas Matot and Maseh from the end of the book of Numbers. But today we have a special treat. We start a new Torah book. The book of it's called in Western world Deuteronomy. In the Hebrew, it's called Devarim. We usually translate it as words, but we're going to talk about why it's so much more than just ordinary words. This is powerful words, buzzing words, buzzwords as it may be, that are designed to do more than just educate, more than just to inform, more than just to stir up the pseudo-intellect of man to make him believe things or think things or hope for things. It is designed to awaken things within you, to stir up the heavenly kedusha energy, the energies of the courts of heaven, which make the angels sing, and make the four living creatures cry, holy, 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 and make the elders bow down and throw down their crowns before the throne. So, if you're here with us, we pray that we'll be able to keep the video going today. That's going to depend upon the internet and how well we're able to keep the internet signal here at Biblical Lifestyle Center in Texarkana. Welcome, Shabbat, Shalom. This is a special Sabbath. It's called Shabbat Chazon in the traditions. It means the Sabbath of vision. The idea of the date, we'll talk about a little bit about the idea, but we should have an increase, an expansion, dramatic influx of ability to see, better perspective, particularly with regard to the plan of the Holy One, of what He has planned to come, and what it's going to take for us to get there, to be with Him, to enjoy this scenario with Him through the trials that loom before us. So, Shabbat Shalom. If you're joining with us today, if you'd like to, if you would, if you don't mind, please just drop us a note. Let us know that you're listening in, tuning in, watching from wherever it is you are. We love to pray over those places you mentioned in your comments. I love to pray over New Zealand. I love to pray over Australia. I love to pray over Israel, from Judea and Samaria all the way into the city of Jerusalem, up into out in the Negev, all through this area, that we were praying for them. And of course, especially today on the 9th of Av, when it appears our enemies have decided to shoot rockets at us again and come after us again. Well, this happens every so often, every time, and especially on the 9th of Av. So we don't fret, but we do take caution. And I pray for you in Israel. I pray for my brothers and sisters there. Well, here we are in Texas, in the warmth of the summer heat, and it is definitely a Texas summer. I want to turn off the notifications on my telephone so you don't hear that beeping sound. But here we are. Assuming you can see me, then we're going to move forward into our discussion. We've come to a landing on the stairs. We have exited our discussions of the book of Numbers, or Bamidbar, as it's called in the Hebrew, as the original name is. And we've exited that, and now we've got a little a change in the atmosphere. This is the season of transition, a tremendous transition. It feels like we're almost disoriented by virtue of the level of transition we're going to undergo. But let me assure you, this too is for our good. This is part of the divine plan. And so we're going to change the idea of having a third-person narrative that Moshe's been giving, of the chronicling the events, up to his first-person narrative. This is going to be a book when he tells us how this whole story impacts him, and therefore how he senses and knows by virtue of his walking with the Holy Spirit, walking with the Holy One, day after day for 40 years. And speaking to him as a man speaks to his friend face to face, how he knows we need to adjust to what's about to take place as well. How it's supposed to mean the story of the Exodus, the story that he's been telling us, the story of the first generation, what I call Gen X, not the letter X, but the word X, EX, it starts with the word Exodus. What that generation means to us. They laid the patterns. We follow in their footsteps. And everything that happens in our world is just a outflowing of what happened in their world. So if we don't understand what happened to them and what their successes were, what the work of the Holy One was in their lives, and if we don't understand also what their vulnerabilities were and what their susceptibilities were and what their failures were, then we will be ill-equipped to handle what takes place in ours, which is merely a repeatings of the patterns in different formats with different names and given different places. So, the Parsha of Devarim begins the book of Devarim. The Parsha of Devarim begins the book of Deuteronomy. This is the final chapter in the scroll of Torah. And so we begin with this sense that there's something major about to happen. This is going to be a climax book. This is going to be a culmination book. We're going to see some amazing things here. We're going to be taken on a ride, a wonderful ride. So here we are in Devarim, Deuteronomy 1, verse 1, through Deuteronomy 3, verse 22. I have, as usual, given a subtitle to this Parsha, to this name of Devarim, and I call it Destination Ahead. You hear this on your GPS if you drive, or if you're with people who drive around with a GPS on. Destination Ahead. And now the subtitle to the subtitle that I would give is, Are you going in or not? Are you staying out? This is the 9th of Av in the year 5782. Now, it is Shabbat Chazon. I mentioned that very briefly before. So the Sabbath of vision. The sages have assigned this day as a special Sabbath day. I call it a transition day. And in one sense, it's a joyful thing because it's time to start planning for Sukkot. If you haven't made your plans for Sukkot yet, start making them. If you haven't made your plans, if you can go to Jerusalem for this feast, as the Torah instructs us to do 3 times a year, including Sukkot, then do it. Check into the reservations, check your hotels, check your airlines. If you can't go to Jerusalem this year for some reason, for whatever reason, think about it next year, but in the meantime, plan where you will do and what you will do for your Sukkot, how you'll build your sukkah, how you'll find your 4 species, all the things that are necessary, and how you will set aside all your sadness, all your depressions, and all your worries, and rejoice for 7 days. Rejoice with your family, with your loved ones. Rejoice with the poor in your family, in your neighborhood. Rejoice with the widow. Rejoice with the fatherless. Rejoice with the foreigners. And learn how to turn everything, all your attention, all your heart into rejoicing. But that's a few weeks away. That's Sukkot. This is our time of transition. And to get to the place where we're ready for Sukkot, we're going to make these transitions. We're transitioning, as we said, first from Sefer, the book of Bamidbar, or Numbers, to the book of Devarim, or Deuteronomy. That's the first transition. Just a different language, a different sense, a different mood of this book, even a different tense, a literary tense. We're going to move from the wilderness obstacle course we've been in for the past few weeks, past few months. We're going to move from the wilderness where everything seems to be a test to a scenic overlook under the shadow of Mount Nebo, across the river of Jordan from the city of Jericho. We are in camp. We've come through the wilderness. I hope you feel like the wilderness is beginning to disappear in your rearview mirror, and your destiny is appearing in your windshield. And it's time. We are going to make a transition from where we have been and what we have endured in that process and what we have learned as a result to where we are going next and what the reason for it all really is. The end game of this entire adventure we've been on in Generation X, generation of the Exodus. And all of this progeny, all of our Generation X repetitions. We're going to make another transition from the 3 weeks between the straits that we've just been in. We've had the last 3 weeks have been what's called in the Hebrew the 3 weeks between the straits. I don't have time today to unpack that in great detail, but it has collated today. This is the final day, and this is called the 9th of Av, or Tisha in Hebrew, which is 9. The Tisha of Av. Tisha B'Av. And so we're going to transition from the 3 weeks between the straits to another season that's important to us, that tells a great story in our lives and must prepare us for Sukkot. And that is the 7 weeks of consolation. I may be overpowering you, bombarding you, it may seem, at this particular stage, with different times and seasons. But it's very important that you understand that everything is choreographed. The Creator of the universe has established a calendar according to which all of our lives will be lived. It is a wonderful thing. It is a blessing that He has done this. But it requires us to reorient from our Western mindsets, from our ordinary sense of what's important in the temporal world that we live in, and realize His calendar is a little different. Matter of fact, it's a lot different than our calendar. So we're going to transition today from the 3 weeks between the straits to the 7 weeks next, the consolation. If you never realize, that's 10 weeks altogether. You add the 3 weeks between the straits to the 7 weeks of consolation, then you get 10 weeks. We're preparing for 10 days between Yom Teruah and Yom Kippur. So we have these issues of the tens. But we're going to transition also in the way we look at the moon cycle we're in. As you know, the moon cycles are how the months are determined in the Hebrew, and the approach of the Scriptures, as a matter of fact. The Exodus 12 tells us that we count our days from the new moon of the month of the ripening grain. So this particular month, this is the 5th moon cycle of the biblical year as the Holy One designed it for us. Not August, this is Av, the month of Av, and it's the 5th month of our 5th moon cycle of the biblical year. But up to this point, we have called it just Av, which means Father. Father can have aspects of discipline. Father can have aspects of authority. Father can have aspects of fearfulness. But we're going to change the wording and the way we look at the month of Av this day forward. From this day forward, it's not just Av, it's Menachem Av. We call this moon cycle, the rest of this moon cycle, Menachem Av. And that means the comfort, the consolation, the goodwill of the Father. I hope you're feeling this. This is an example of Devarim. The goodwill, the comfort, the consolation of the Father. And that is what we're turning our attention to. He will see where He will comfort us, how He will encourage us, how He will exhort us to walk in His goodwill. So we're going to have Menachem Av, and that will be followed by a special month, a special moon cycle, the 6th moon cycle of the biblical year called Elul. Elul, it is the time of Teshuvah, making return. It is the time of special outpouring and special visitation to prepare ourselves for the coming high holy days. All right, we are also transitioning from the brokenness that we have experienced through reading the Book of Lamentations. I hope you've been reading the Book of Lamentations. I suggested earlier that you should, but I realize there are many things that distract you. But if you've been reading a little bit in the Book of Lamentations during this last 3 weeks, the 3 weeks between the straits, I'm hoping you begin to realize you're ready for a transition. You're ready to change this heaviness of the Book of Lamentations. So, Aika, where are you? How? How did this happen? To another approach. And the approach that the Holy One has in mind for us to transition to is the inspiring in-game briefing strategy of Deutero Isaiah, as it's called by some scholars. The second part of Isaiah, from Isaiah 40 to the end, through the final conclusions. And this Deutero Isaiah section, I call it How Joy Comes in the Morning. We've had the season of mourning, M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G. Now we're going to have the season of mourning, M-O-R-N-I-N-G, when joy comes in the morning. The whole 7-week period that we're looking at, all the way into the Feast of Sukkot, is going to be about joy coming in the morning, because we're going to focus on the end game, not on the current status of what we've learned and going through. Right. We have a great appointment of destiny, with destiny, as we stand on the banks of the Jordan Rift Valley and look over towards Jericho, as part of our story of the Gen X generation begins with Deuteronomy. 400 years now have passed since Abraham had his great dream vision, when he fell asleep, and the Holy One passed in his mind and made a covenant with him at that particular stage, torches passing through the pieces that he had cut. We've had 400 years pass since that time. And finally, the thing that the Holy One promised, which is that there would be a great return after the people were held in bondage for 400 years and oppressed for 400 years, that this Abraham's seed would return to the land. That was the promise. That's what happened 400 years ago. That was happening. And now the question is, the land is ready for us. The point is that the land is finally ready for us to occupy. It has not been. The iniquity of the Amorites, the Emorai, had not reached its fullness whenever the dream was given to Avram, but now it has. There are two witnesses to that, and the witnesses that we have to that are Sihon and his hordes that attacked us, and Og and his hordes that attacked us. These Amorites that attacked us, the iniquity of the Amorites has now fulfilled, because they are now so antagonistic that they are proven they're not going to make teshuvah, they're not going to accept the ways of the Holy One. And so Genesis 12:3 applies, the thing that the Holy One told Avram, the land will vomit them out. That's really already begun. They're already on the east side of the Jordan. Their residence normally would be on the west side of the Jordan in the land of Canaan, but they've already expanded eastward, and they've taken over the land of the Moabites and the Ammonites. And now they have come, and Sihon and Og have attacked us. All right, so that's the sign. That's the two witnesses that the iniquity of the Amorites has finally reached its fullness. The land of Canaan is now ready for us. The question becomes, are we ready for it? Are we ready to take possession of that which the Holy One has been promising that we would take possession ever since before we were born, ever since before Yitzhak was born, before Yaakov was born, before Moshe was born, when Avram had his vision, actually before he had his vision, the Holy One promised that this land would belong to his seed forever. It's a strategic beachhead for the kingdom of heaven to invade earth. It's not just the land we possess. It is a headquarters for the great invasion of earth by heaven. Well, so here we are at the book of Deuteronomy, beginning with this book of Devarim, and Moses has only 36 more days. He's 120 years old now, and he has only 36 more days on earth in the mortal body to get us ready to go into the land. We said the land's ready for us, but what will it take to get us ready for the land? So he has 36 days to get us past the trauma of the wilderness experience we've just experienced. I hope if you feel that you may have experienced some trauma, you probably have experienced some trauma, both in your spiritual life and in your physical life, your economic life, in your relational life, in your emotions, in all ways. Now here's the thing. The Holy One knows your trauma. He knows what you've experienced. He does not diminish it or belittle it in any way. He does want you to know that he is ready to begin to heal it. If you're willing to listen and respond, he is ready to bring you forth beyond it, to have you overcome it, to have you transcend it, not be stuck in it and bound by it the rest of your life. So Moshe has 36 days on earth to help us get past the trauma of the wilderness experience and whatever else has happened in our life. And yet, though he gets us past the trauma, it's not all about that. It's about the fact that we have an agenda, we have a purpose, we have a mission to fulfill in the earth. We have a blueprint for a kingdom of heaven-scented society that we are to build and model and implement in the earth. We have specifications, we have directions, we have applicable rules of engagement with the peoples and the nations of this earth. We've been told how to relate to each other, to the poor, to the widow, to the foreigner, to the Levite, to all sorts of different, to our enemies even. We've been told how to do this. We are being told more and more by Moshe to prepare us to go into this land. Rules of engagement that we will have both with places and with people in the world. And he is now ready to inspire one more thing. Moshe's discussions in the book of Deuteronomy are desired to inspire passion, fire within your belly, a dream, a vision, a desire to enter the land, to go into the land, to go into the purpose and the destiny for which you were born, to bring the light of the world into being, to be a light to the Gentiles, to understand that we have a mission that transcends the hurt or the trauma that we may experience or the hate that we may be shown, even the anti-Semitism we experience. That's not where we end this. We end this by overcoming and transcending and not hating the people who do these things, or else we become like them. So are you ready to have your passion stirred by Moshe in the book of Deuteronomy? All right. I want to move on next. The ninth of Av. I want you to briefly discuss it because it is the day, starting at sundown last night. This is the ninth day of the biblical year, fifth month of the biblical year, which is called Av, the Father. Each year, the sages have ordained that we should study Parsha Devarim, which we're doing, and also read Isaiah 1:1 through 27. The first chapter, basically, of Isaiah, the description of the initial confrontation between the Holy One and the prophet Yeshayahu. You come now, let's reason together. The ox, you people don't know. The ox knows where the food is, but you don't know where your food comes from. All these things. This is in this parsha. To read that as well. That's our haftarah. This is because there are some very important lessons. The connection between Parsha Devarim and the Shabbat Hazon Haftarah of Isaiah 1:1 through 27 are connected in very important ways. There are important lessons that we are supposed to learn about ourselves and about our national Achilles heel level vulnerabilities that are found discussed in the history lessons that Moshe is going to give us as his preface to the book of Deuteronomy, as his preface to the amazing manual that he is giving us for building a kingdom of heaven-centered society on planet Earth. And if we don't learn from the mistakes that our ancestors made in Gen X, Genesis, generation of Exodus, we are likely to repeat their folly. We are likely to absorb their pathology and toxicity. And alas, we are likely to suffer their fate when the time comes to go in and begin to function according to the grand plan of the redemption and restoration. We will sit it out because we are not ready. May that not happen to any of us. Now, it always seems that the trauma, the negativity comes to a head on the ninth day of the fifth month of the biblical year, on Tisha B'Av. Hebrew legend says that it was on the fifth day of the ninth day of the fifth month that Moshe descended Mount Sinai the first time to find Bnei Israel engaged in worshiping the golden calf. Well, you remember what bad things happened there. An ancient midrash also establishes that it was the same day, 1 year later, that our ancestors accepted the evil report of the 10 spies concerning the land, and got all emotionally traumatized and fearful and divided, and began to have these divisions between the 10 and the 2, and begin to take up stones even against our own flesh and blood, against Caleb and Yehoshua, or Joshua as he's known in the Western world. And so it was that beginning with these things, the ninth day of Av became famous as the ultimate day of what in Hebrew is called Kurban, or destruction, or devastation. The day upon which the covenant people seem most vulnerable to an attack by their enemies. Are we really vulnerable on this day? If so, why? Well, this is so, the sages opine, because it is this time of the year more than any other that we always seem to be a house divided. Just like at the time of the spies, there were the 10, the two camps. We begin to divide. So the sages have said that this time of year we're vulnerable because we're divided. We have what is often referred to as sinat chinam. We indulge, that's called baseless hatred standardly, but it really means that we don't want anybody else to get grace. We don't think anybody else is entitled to get grace or favor or forgiveness. We just want them to be punished. We want them to get to suffer what they're due. And therefore, because we have this, we are a house divided. We cannot love. We cannot be unified in the kingdom. That means we're vulnerable. Well, is that happening to you? Do you sense yourself losing your ability to want forgiveness and mercy, to love mercy for other people, especially for those of you who disagree with you on substantive issues, or maybe who even who have hurt you or your family in some way, or the people of the Holy One? We obviously don't like that. We don't want to be hurt. No one wants to suffer that, and it really does emotionally traumatize us when those things happen. But the question is, if we lose our ability to want mercy for those people, we are sunk. So, this is the time of year when the harvests are coming in, the grapes, the dates, the pomegranates, the figs are in. We've had bins full of grain, both from the standpoint of barley and wheat. That's done. We're getting all these fruit coming in. The olives are on the vine, on the trees. We know we're going to have a good harvest there. Whoa, all this material stuff is happening for us. We get distracted, perhaps. This is one of those times of the year we get distracted from our collective calling in the covenant by temporal, material things. And so this baseless hatred or rejection of grace for others makes us judgmental. It makes us territorial. We turn on each other. We spew lashon hara out of our mouths that are supposed to be vessels of blessing and encouragement and exhortation in the kingdom. We go tribal. Oh, we divide according to ideology. We divide according to genealogy. We divide ourselves, and therefore we become a house divided. And when we start doing these things, when we get tribal, we always become loveless. We always become lawless. We always become merciless. And we always simultaneously become vulnerable to the attacks of our enemies. Having left the way of the Holy One, we find ourselves helpless against either the propaganda strategies of our enemies or their physical attacks against us. As the Master taught, a house divided against itself cannot stand. So, as we begin our discussions in great detail today, as we finish the rest of our session, we've got about halfway through. As we finish our session, and here are some questions that will be on the table. How tribal have you become, beloved one? Of whom are you secretly or openly envious? Of whom are you secretly or openly envious? Are you worried about the 1%? Are you worried about this ethnicity or that ethnicity or this movement or that movement or this ideology or that ideology? Of whom are you secretly or openly envious or have enmity against? Who do you hate without cause? Baseless hatred. Who do you not want to see get mercy or forgiveness or the chance at redemption? These are questions you need to be thinking about if we're going to go into this book of Deuteronomy. And the question is going to be asked at the end is, are you going to go in to the plan of the Holy One for you? Or are these things going to hinder you on the way? Who do you consider unduly privileged? If you consider any human being or any ethnicity or any ideology unduly privileged, you will have sinat chinam, and we will divide yourselves against them. And in that situation, we're vulnerable. By whom and about what are you offended? Do you even understand what offends you? What makes you presently offended? What you're presently offended by? What you're historically offended by? What you're likely to be offended by? Do you get what your vulnerabilities are? Where things get under your skin? Because you see, that's all flesh. You think you're outraged from a spiritual righteousness standpoint, indignation of spiritual morality. No, you're not. It's just flesh. It's just your flesh acting up and causing you to be distracted from the plans of the Holy One to redeem all mankind. Species as a species, bloodline by bloodline, family by family, household by household, and individual by individual, and to restore all of creation to its original intended state of beauty and fruitfulness and shalom, hillside by hillside, valley by valley, mountaintop by mountaintop, riverbed by riverbed, terrain by terrain. So, these are questions that are pending. Who and by what are you offended? Another question is pending right now we have to think about before we get deep into this. What Who are you quick to judge? What group of people, what person are you quick to judge? If you hear something, you see something, and immediately you jump to the negative conclusion. Who are you quick to mock, to make fun of, to be sarcastic about, to let sarcasm and cynicism flow out of your mouth about? Who are you hating? Who do you hate? Who do you really dislike? Who do you consider beyond the reach of grace, of mercy, of forgiveness, of restoration? Who do you consider beneath the entitlement to human dignity and worth and respect? Not their behavior, them as an individual. These are questions that we need to ask, or else we'll fall down the same trap, and we will not be ready to take the land. We will not be ready to step into the destiny. We will not be able to do the things the Holy One has called us to do. So, I've asked you the questions. I'm going to go on further. The shofar has sounded for this. My questions are like a shofar, hopefully, that sounded in your ears. There's something resonating in you. It is time to begin our ascent to the next flight of Torah's grand staircase, to relevance on the world stage again, and to our place planned for us before the foundation of the world in the books of remembrance that are being written in heaven. Stretching out before us as we stand at this precipice is the great download from our King, how to build a kingdom of heaven-centered society on earth. A revelation package that will carry us through the harvest season, through Sukkot, and the high holy days. And each year on this day, Shabbat Hazon, we shake off the dust of lamentations, to shake off the trauma of the wilderness and of the bondages, shake off the pain of the hatred and the attacks of our enemy. Shake off those things and turn our focus to the upcoming 7 weeks of consolation, to the great day of trumpet blasts at the conclusion of that 7 weeks, to the 10 days of awe that follow the trumpet blast, to the day of rehearsing our own death and giving account before our King, which is known as Yom Kippur, and ultimately to the joyful celebration with our neighbors, our fellows, even our enemies of Sukkot, where we water our souls from the revelation stream of the Holy One and his brethren, known to us as Sefer Devarim in the book of Deuteronomy. Last week, though we didn't have a chance to discuss it, the theme of the two parshas we studied was people get ready, there's a change coming. That was the final conclusion of the book of Deuteronomy, of Numbers rather, and while it wasn't written in those phrases, you could just feel it. People get ready, there's a change coming. Well, beloved, the time for that change is upon us now. Are you going in to the Holy One's plans and to his ways, or are you done? Are you going to just pass this one by? If you're going in, gird up your loins, buckle up your seatbelts, and hold on to your hats, because the final leg of this race is going to be one wild and exhilarating ride. Now, I wish I could show you the screen, the point that I got a picture of from Mount Nebo, looking out over the plain, over the Jordan Rift Valley, and into Israel beyond. It's modern. It's a modern picture, and there's actually a table there like you find in a mall or a government building. It says, "You are here." You are here. Well, if you see where you are here, you can see the direction of Hebron. You can see in the direction of Jericho, direction of Jerusalem. You're looking out from this great vantage point of Mount Nebo, or the plain right underneath it, out of Jordan, as it would be now, over into what is now Israel. And so this is the idea of getting us ready. You are here. Do you understand what's before you? We have finally overcome all the challenges of the wilderness. We are now encamped, 601,730 battle-scarred warriors strong on the plains of Moab in the shade of Mount Nebo, overlooking the Jordan Rift Valley and the walled city of Jericho, whose people are quaking in fear because of us. Why does the world hate you? Because they're afraid of you. It is not a sign of their strength. It is a sign of their weakness. And the Holy One has sent the hornet in front of us, caused the fear of us to arise in other people. Therefore, we should not fear them. This will be the actual closing words of Moshe. Do not fear them. He's talking to Yehoshua on behalf of us all. Do not fear these people. Don't hate them. Don't fear them. Because we stand on the brink of our destiny. And we have just one more river to cross. You see, every one of the challenges we faced in the wilderness, all the traumas we experienced there, were merely part of a glorious odyssey the Holy One planned for us, a grand emunah, faith-building adventure designed to make us bond with the Creator, to enable us to see His beautiful vision for us as a people, for humankind as a species, and for the planet Earth in which we live as an ecosystem that radiates and reflects the glory of His heavenly kingdom. Where we have been, though, is only preparation for where we're going. The final section of Torah's scroll is finally ready to be revealed. It's going to be unveiled by Moshe before our eyes. So the next few weeks we will be experiencing. So what soul-stirring discoveries does this treasure chest of wisdom hold in store for us this year? What will we learn? What challenges and what opportunities await us on this leg of the journey? What nuggets of revelation about the Mashiach and about His kingdom to come will we find hidden in plain sight along the way? How will these next few weeks of finishing the course of Torah change our worldview and our perspective on our bridegroom king's grand redemptive plan for mankind and creation? How will our minds be renewed? How will our hearts be inspired? How will our lives be empowered? It's a good time, I think, to speak our call to worship, the Baruch Hu. Join us if you can. If you just don't know the words, just if you want to, close your eyes if you're not driving, and we'll move on. Baruch Hu Adonai Hamvorah. Baruch Adonai Hamvorah Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bakar banu mikol ha'amin v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. And now open our eyes, O Holy One, that we may see wondrous things in your Torah. For we are but strangers in this earth, so do not hide your commandments from us. The closing lines of last week, Sefer B'Midbar, chapter 36 of Numbers, verse 13. Said this, maybe the wrong verse. Chapter 36. It says, Ele ha-mitzvot ve'ha-mishpatim, and these are the mitzvot and the mishpatim, the instructions and we call them decrees of justice, judgment. Asher ziva Adonai b'yad Moshe, that the Holy One put in Moshe's hand. El b'nei Israel, for the children of Israel, be'arvat Moab, on Moab's plateau, al Yordan Jericho, across the Jordan from Jericho. Okay, that was how the book of Numbers ended. About the mitzvot and the mishpatim that the Holy One gave to Moshe, put in his hand for us. Mitzvot and mishpatim. Or are we going to have an upgrade? We're going to move from the mitzvot and mishpatim, which are wonderful in themselves and critical part of our plan. We're going to step up to Devarim. The next thing is not mitzvot and mishpatim. The book of Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy is not about mitzvot and mishpatim. Those things have been in the first 4 books. Now we're going to have the Devarim of the Holy One. So, what we learned last week at the end of chapter 36 of Numbers, that was then. This is now. It's time to move on. Sefer Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy, the book on which we're about to embark, compares to the first 4 books of Torah, somewhat like the book of Revelation, compares to the first 4 gospel accounts, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, as they're called in the Western world. You can see that the book of Deuteronomy is like the book of Revelation in relation to the other books. Like Revelation, Devarim has a very different feel and a very different energy and a very different focus than the 4 corner books. The 4 corner books supply what I call the tassels And the Devarim and Revelation provide the blue thread, the thin blue thread that goes through them. This is Moshe's final 5 weeks and 1 day, 36 days of mortal life. He's going to die on what by tradition is known as the 7th day of Adar. And then 30 days of mourning will take place. Very shortly thereafter, on the 6th day of the month of Nisan, the first day, will cross the Jordan. The 10th day, rather, of the month of Nisan, will cross the Jordan under Jericho. So we're getting close to going into the Promised Land. But Moshe is going to be departing first. Moshe is 120 years old, as I said, and his third phase of life is coming to a close. Remember, the first phase of life was the 40 years he lived in Egypt in the household of Pharaoh. The second 40 years was in years he lived in exile in Midian as a shepherd of someone else's sheep. At the third phase, the last 40 years have been spent in Bamidbar in the wilderness as our rabbi, serving as our rabbi and our prophet in this world. So let's talk about what he's going to give us. He's going to speak not mitzvot and mishpatim. He's going to speak Devarim. He's going to speak, and in Hebrew, this word means a lot more than the English will ever tell you. In English, it's usually translated like words. That is so generic, it just doesn't really help you much, does it? The words of Moshe. No, these are the Devarim of Moshe. Words of impartation, words of empowerment, words of activation. This is the master's program of the kingdom of heaven, Devarim, not the undergraduate work of Mishpot and Mishpatim. This is the graduate program, the master's program. Devarim is the plural form of Debar, and this is the Hebrew word for bee. If you understand the relationship between words and bees, is they both make a sound and they both have a sting. And so literally, Devarim means humming of the bees. Humming of as if the heavens were made of bees and the heavens are humming. And we're catching the hum, but we're also recognizing the possibility of the sting. But the other thing about bees about Devarim is that it is about production. We think of it as a sting or as a pollination, but they're pollinating the earth, but they're also producing the sweetness of honey out of the things of the earth. So words in English is a very figurative application. Words of Moshe, these kind of words that we're going to find in the book of Deuteronomy, are like bees. They can produce sweet nectar, healing balm, or they can sting and inject poison, but they are about the plan of production, the fruitfulness of the earth. The verb debar, which is at the root of debarim, means to set things in a row for functionality purposes, to arrange things, components, in order, to put things in their most advantageous, efficacious places and sequences. If you've ever seen a beehive, how they prepare a beehive, you understand what I'm saying. It's all neatly in an order. It's all strategically located for things to take place as they need to take place. So, the Devarim are about sequencing a building project pursuant to the architect's blueprint, to directing a play, perhaps, or choreographing a dance, perhaps, or arranging a symphony. It is setting things in order. The book of Deuteronomy will be setting things in order. Are you ready to have your life set in order? I know many people say that we can't get our ducks in a row because we don't even know where our ducks are. But the idea here is that the Holy One wants to set us in order, and He wants to set things in motion. Picture a colony of bees building a hive for a queen to administrate. The noun Devarim, which comes from the Hebrew verb debar, is borrowed from the ancient Egyptian trade of beekeeping and honey producing. You see where we get the connection between bees and, quote, words. Literally, it means to set and keep a hive in place. That's what the Holy One's trying to do. We're His hive. He's trying to keep us in place, functional, operational, buzzing, in order to be equipped to thrive, to be productive, to nurture life, to nurture health, to nurture the ecosystem, and to bring well-being, spread well-being across many locations and many generations. All right, so we're graduating from one kind of approach, which is mitzvot and mishpatim, Moshe's daily journal format, which he's going to give us a third-person kind of narrative. That's what's happened before. We've seen that in the first 4 books of Torah, but we're entering a new portal. We're entering a Devarim portal. What's about to happen is released by Moshe of the humming, the buzzing, the transformative energy, healing sounds of heaven. This is the realm where men yield their tongues and their pens to the Holy One's exclusive use, who then speak and write and deliver nothing but the very true tone oracles of the living God. Are you in for this? Do you want to be part of this? Are you willing to let go of other things that are contradictory towards those things? Are you willing to let go of flesh-driven emotional responses and reactions? Are you willing to let go of high-sounding pseudo-intellectual abstractions and opinions? Are you ready to let go of ideological, philosophical, religious, and political rants? Are you ready to let go of ethnic prejudices and ethnic accusations of either privilege or inferiority? Are you ready to let go of nationalities and cultural preferences and class biases? Are you really to let go of it? Because if you're not, you will not be able to radiate the true tone, Devarim, of the Holy One. Are you ready to let go of recycled vocabulary of men, whether it be politics, ideology, or religion? Are you ready to let go of the things that people have put in your mouth and want you just to regurgitate on cue? Are you ready to let go of prideful, blame-casting rhetoric? Are you ready to let go of sarcasm? Are you ready to let go of cynicism? Are you ready to let go of cursing? Are you ready to let go of profanity? Are you ready to let go of pithy slogans that you might put on a placard or a sign or a banner to stir up people's emotions? Are you ready to let go of worn-out cliches of religion? Are you ready to let go of hype? Are you ready to let go of hyperbole? Are you ready to let go of hypocrisy? Are you ready for Devarim? Are you ready to open this portal? This is Moshe's soliloquy, as I call it, his final set of debriefings before he turns the whole thing over to Yehoshua and indirectly to us. And I would say that the times, they are a-changing. The changes that we're seeing are from in this text from third person to first person format, changing from a focus on mitzvot and mishpatim and hukot and edut of Devarim to Devarim. From the previous books was mitzvot, hukat, mishpatim, and edut, or testimonies. Now we're going to Devarim, which are empowering, directing, or inspiring words. We're shifting also from direct quotation of divine utterance, Vayadaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, and the Holy One spoke to Moshe and said, from that format to prophetic exhortation, to Ele HaDavarim Asher Dibar Moshe. These are the words, the Devarim, the Holy One spoke to Moshe. And also Adonai Eloheinu Debar Eleinu, and the Holy One spoke to us in third person. The shift in emphasis from the trials and trails of the wilderness to our mission, to our real purpose in life, vis-a-vis the land of Israel and vis-a-vis the nations and ethnicities and cultures and peoples of the world. Here's the basic outline of the book. There are three main discourses. There's an introduction and there's three main discourses. The first discourse will be basically Exodus 1 through 4. It's Parshas Devarim and the first part of Va'echanan, the first two parshas, part of the second parsha at least. This is going to include a retrospective from Moshe on the journey we've just undergone. He's going to examine the critical moments of the wilderness testing that we've undergone between Sinai and Nebo, Moab in particular. It's 1:1 through 3:27. Then he's going to go a little bit further and describe the substance of our diplomatic mission. That's in chapter 4, 1 through 40. Then the second discourse will begin. The second discourse will begin in chapter 5. It will remind us and have us relive the betrothal ceremony we had at Sinai, one generation removed from when it really took place, from Gen X. He will teach us the most fundamental elements of the covenant lifestyle. This is where we'll get the Shema, the Yirah Adonai, the fear of the Lord, then Shema, and teaching and speak of these things as we sit in our home. Be buzzing with them at all times as we walk by the way, when we lie down, when we rise up. Teaching faithfully to our children. This will be part of that process. And he will go through that. This is part of the second discourse. And he will also teach us how to function as a light of the world at the level called for by the grand redemptive plan. That's chapter 7 and into chapter 8. It goes on. There's going to be a third discourse, and that's much later in the book. The second discourse is definitely the longest. Later in the book, in chapters 29 and 30, he's going to have the covenant cutting ceremony. We're going to actually be called to choose life and enter in the covenant. And then the grand conclusion, chapters 31 through 34, he'll have his final charge to the nation as a whole. Moshe will. Then he'll give us his last recorded prophetic download. He'll commission a successor, Yehoshua. He'll sing his prophetic song of the ages that tells the whole history of mankind after he dies, all the way up to the time of the Mashiach. He will give us a divine briefing on his cause of death as to why he actually died. He will give us a parting blessing over the tribes, and he will record his own death, burial, and epitaph. Actually, probably have Yehoshua write that. We don't really know how it happened, but we're going to read of his death, his burial, and his epitaph. That will be the way the book concludes. Now, I want to make sure we're still online here. Let me make sure I haven't lost you along the way. No, we're still there. That's such a good thing. So let me go forward a little bit. The opening verses of our Parsha and of the entire Sefer Devarim, found in Deuteronomy 1:1 and following, go as follows. Ve'ele ha-devarim asher diber Moshe el kol Yisrael. And these are the buzz-generating sounds and words that Moshe released over all of Bnei Israel. All Bnei Israel means no one is excluded. There's not some section of that. The seed of Abraham, whether it be by genealogy or whether it be by emunah, we have seen these are the words. These are the buzz-generating sounds, words that put us in order for all Israel. And it goes on. Bamidbar, Ba'arava, Molsuf, Ba'in Paran, V'bein Tofel, V'lavan, V'hasarot, B'dizahav, Achar Asar Yom, Bikorev Derek Hasaer Al Kadesh Barnea. Now here's what these are words. These Hebrew words are buzzwords. It's like if I said Woodstock to you. It's like if I said My Lai to a Vietnam, one who lived during the Vietnam era. It's like I said Waterloo. It's like I said, for more recently, Charlottesville. I mean, these are words that speak. Valley Forge. These are words that should do more than just and communicate to you. These should evoke from you certain senses. There may be emotions for sure, but beyond emotions, a spiritual response. Bamidbar, in the wilderness. Well, we've just spent weeks in the wilderness. We spent 40 years in the timetable of the Gen X in the wilderness. What happened there? Bamidbar, this is not just like he said the words and just bam, it all returned to us. Ba'arava, in the place of plateaus, in the flat places, in the place where we come to a landing, a place where we quit climbing but we also weren't descending, a place where we begin to settle. We felt we were on in between steps. Mol Suf, on the other side of Suf. What is Suf? The Sea of Reeds. The whole Sea of Reeds and everything that's happened since the Sea of Reeds. The song of the sea, and then how we lost our song along the way. That should be awakening in our spirits. Ba'ain Paran, oh my goodness, what happened in the wilderness of Paran, in the watershed where Ishmael and his mother settled, and where they set up their kingdom, and every man against every other man, and loud braying, noisy talk all the time, negative criticism. That spirit hung there. So these words should be, this is what we've been through. and Ulbain Tofel, the Lavan, and we could go into the details of, and Vahatzarot, which is where Miriam was stricken with leprosy, and Dizahav with too much gold, too much. We did too many weird things with gold. The golden calf was one of the examples. You can see these processes, and then we came from Horeb, from Mount Horeb. We should remember Horeb and the sweetness of that. And now have we passed through mountain of Seir, the Mesra mountain of Edom, and then we got all the way to Kadesh Barnea, and that will open a whole new can of worms at Kadesh Barnea, because that's where the spies event took place, and that's going to be the critical point he's going to discuss. Now, before he goes to details on those things, though, he goes forward. He says, "But it came to pass in the 40th year, in the 11th moon cycle," which was called Shabbat, on the first day of the moon cycle. So he's going to tell us when he's going to start these speeches. It came to pass in the 40th year after the Exodus, in the 11th moon cycle, on the first day of the moon cycle, the Rosh Chodesh, Yom Echad, Moshe spoke to Bnei Israel. And he spoke all that the Holy One had given to encourage them, to inspire them, to connect them with him. Zavadim, or command them, it says in some context, but command is such a insufficient English word. And he says, after he smote Sihon, king of the Amorite, and who dwelt in Heshbon, which is the place of reason and calculation, and after he smote Og, king of Bashan, who dwelt among Ashtaroth, the goddesses of fertility in Edrei. So we have Sihon and Og are very important players in this drama that Moshe wants to remember. He wants us to remember Kadesh Barnea. He wants us to remember Sihon and Og. He wants to remember the Heshbon, the reason and calculation realm of life. He wants us to remember Ashtaroth, the superstition, natural gods, the process, natural religions context. And then he's going to close the parsha, the parsha. And we're not going to end this with this, but I just want you to know where we're going so that you'll have some idea of what he's going to do in this first parsha. He's going to be talking to Yehoshua, and at the end in chapter 3, verses 21b through 22, he's going to say, "Your eyes have seen." Seen, the vision. Chazon, the parsha, the Shabbat of vision. "Your eyes have seen all that the Holy One your God has done to these kings," namely Sihon and Og, which we just talked about. "Even so will the Holy One do to all the kingdoms through which you pass. You must not fear them, for the Holy One your God himself fights for you." I told you these were Devarim. I told you these were buzz-creating, generating words. I told you these were designed to evoke something deep in your spirit. Alo tira, do not be afraid of them. Your eyes have seen the miracles that have already been wrought. You know that the Holy One is still with you, and not only is he with you, watching you, cheering you on, he is fighting for you. He is going before you and sending the hornet and sending the fear of you before the nations. So, as we started our discussion today, destination ahead. Are you going in or not? Moshe's parting challenge, the last thing he's going to do in his 36 days upon the earth, is to call us to cut a covenant with the Creator of the universe. You say, but we already did that back at Sinai. Well, the problem with what happened at Sinai, beloved, was that we were novices. We were just fresh out of slavery. We had no idea what we were being called to do. And so at a certain point, after the second recitation of the 10 words that he gave us, and he began to tell us the Mishpatim discourse and the mitzvot, and we said, we yelled out in our innocence, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do these things, we'll make it come to pass, and we will shema the voice of God, the voice of the Holy One. Well, that was spoken without having any clue as to what we were looking for or what we were going to have to deal with. And then we found out in the wilderness what we were facing. And now we're more mature. And now we've a generation in. And now we know whether we can answer these right or not, whether we'll go in or not. There's two options that Moshe will give us. We will not, in this book, he will not tell us how we answer. We have to choose. Every generation has to choose between two ways of looking at it. Whenever the Holy One lays out his covenant for us and calls us to the destiny and mission for which we're called, away from the things of the world into the things of the kingdom and bringing those things to the earth, we can have two responses. We can do like our ancestors did in their childishness at Sinai, Na'aseh v'nishma. I pray that's our response. Now knowing what we're in for, what we're committing to. But the other one is the possibility continues that we might say, Lo na'ale, we are not going up, we're not going in. Don't make that response, beloved. Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your heart. So we are at the stage of covenant commitment, phase 2. I said the final 36 days of Moshe will be offering us a covenant. The Na'aseh commitment of Sinai was a general commitment made by awestruck novices and ignorance. But the Nebo commitment that he is calling for us, going to call for us before this book is over, is left unspoken, left hanging in the air, a call to overcomers of all generations to make a specific covenant with awareness and with understanding. Well, that's all the time we have for today. I hope you enjoy your studies and meditations in Parsha Devarim. I hope that he awakens Moshe's words, his Devarim, awaken in you a spiritual cry, a longing for Jerusalem, a longing to rejoice, and longing to fulfill the purposes for which you were put upon the earth. Shabbat Shalom. See you next week.